Okay, it's back. Okay. I think it's just a problem with these headphones as speakers, not as recorders, though. So it should be able to still record my voice. Anyway, let me just start reading. Probably going to start reading this evaluation, and we'll see how long it takes. Because it ended up being about 999 words when I wrote it all out. It might be a little bit verbose, but it covers all the main points and all of my main criticisms of the class. So, okay, I'm going to, without any further delay, I should just start. I have several criticisms of this professor's teaching style and this class in general. Most importantly, I believe that the time spent in class could have been spent much more efficiently. In my view, a chronic, lasting problem was that in lectures, the professor would jump straight to examples without explaining the theory sufficiently. He would advance through the slides at an infuriatingly fast speed, without giving enough time for those of us trying to write down notes from the slides that we were seeing for the first time. Some slides were given less than 5 or 10 seconds, literally, for us to take notes. This gave a faulty and incomplete foundational knowledge base from which we were expected to answer clicker quizzes. What made this additionally frustrating was that there was no required textbook for the course, and the slides, which essentially served as the textbook, were not posted online until after the lecture, making it difficult to be able to be extra prepared for class, and difficult to read ahead. Frankly, this is not how lectures should be organized in a high-level computer science course. In many instances, the professor did not speak in complete clauses, causing more confusion. The professor told far too many off-topic jokes instead of teaching at a slow, careful, deliberate pace in order to educate us. A slow, careful, deliberate pace, not rushing through the material, would have been far more effective. I'd also like to comment on the professor's apparent lack of enthusiasm for the topic at hand. Specifically, I disapprove the professor's tactic of poisoning the well in regard to prologue, before the students actually had a chance to decide for themselves whether they liked it or not. A professor should never, in any circumstance, show or spread a lack of enthusiasm for the academic topic at hand. This is an extremely important standard with which I judge all my professors, in any course. How much passion and enthusiasm did he or she have and spread to students? By announcing publicly that he expects students to hate prologue, the professor instantly failed my most important criterion of evaluation and contributed to a culture of negativity toward the topic. I have other concerns regarding the assignments and grading in the course. First, I thought that the communication could have been far improved regarding labs. There was a day when my TA stated that there was no lab, when in fact there was one, and by the time I realized this, there were only a few hours to submit the lab. On another occasion, the lab was not listed on the submit server until much later. Now, thankfully, there was an extension for this particular instance, but it should have been better coordinated in the first place. The general incentive for doing labs was unclear as well. By that I mean they alluded to, if you're on the border between a B- and a C+, then doing all the labs, might push your grade up. And although this didn't stop me from doing almost all of them anyway, it was still an indication of some lack of organization. Furthermore, I would suggest that there was not enough partial credit awarded for work done, especially for projects. For example, I recall spending several hours working on Reachable, a function in Project 2B. I lost the entire amount of points for that release test for Reachable, even though my code worked on all my personal test cases, simply because it didn't throw an error when the input was not in the graph. Now, I know this because I went to the TA office hours after the fact. This was evidently the only edge case I failed, and yet I get the same score on test Reachable as one of my peers who didn't even try to program Reachable at all. Clearly, any reasonable person would agree that this is not a fair system. Some less egregious examples existed in other projects, like in the Prologue project where a small number of maze predicates were worth a large, coarse-grained chunk of points, but perhaps these later examples are more justifiable. All this, and I have hardly addressed clickers. In the interest of time and space, I will keep it succinct. I believe that there should not be clickers in this class, and if there must be, then they should be organized and managed differently. The main problems with clickers are they were expensive for little actual benefit. We were not given enough time to think thoroughly about the clicker questions to make sure that we individually understand it before having someone else blurt out the answer. And they were not presented or treated, or rather they were presented and treated as the one and only incentive for coming to class. In a high-level class, there need not be an incentive for coming to class. The benefit that the professor or that the teachers add to the course should be enough to make students attend, and if they don't, that's their own decision. Now, I, for one, always come to class, so I'd rather this class time be spent effectively and not be disrupted by people who are there only to do a clicker quiz, or to goof off, or whatever else. Thus, one should either get rid of clickers entirely, saving cost and stress involved with them, or one should at least give students enough time and not force them to talk amongst each other right upon seeing a question. There should be a moment of quiet, a moment of silence, to make sure that you as an individual understand the material first. After all, there is no clicker or friend available on an exam. Finally, there were cases when the actual project files that we downloaded and extracted from the website were inaccurate or not up to date. To give some examples, the getVals function description for Project 2A was not up to date in the project file, and the announcement on Piazza was only made a couple of days before the project was due, which could easily have costed you some points if you missed that. The CFG described in Project 4A was incomplete, and the Prologue project contained some extraneous information about the SAT solver, which was not part of the project this semester, and also not offered as extra credit. So these inconsistencies, though they were far from the most important issues with the class, nonetheless show a lack of organization, a lack of coordination that should be fixed for future classes.